This session will take you through the concept of waste and how you might identify wastes so that you can go on to eliminate them. So how do we define waste? Waste is any task or item that does not add value from the perspective of the customer or our patient. At this point and throughout, we would emphasize that we are thinking about wasteful processes and not wasteful people. So if waste is anything that does not add value, we need first to clarify value. And we must always emphasize above all that value is seen through the eyes of our customer, our patient. Within SASH Plus methodology, we apply a value-added test to distinguish between value-added and non-value-added activity. This is a 4-part value-added test. If you are not able to answer yes to all of these questions, the process does not meet the value-added test. So, does the task contribute to meeting the patient's needs? Yes or no? Would the patient be willing to pay for the task? Does the task transform the patient product or service? Is the task done right the first time? To emphasize again, if you answer no to any of these questions, the task is not value added. So to emphasize again, the focus is on process, not people. Our staff are not deliberately wasting time, and we must be respectful to our colleagues and not expect them to engage in wasteful activity. So, what is waste? Waste is not required and is done anyway. It is required due to rules, laws, or regulation. It is required due to poor processes, equipment, or facilities. And it can be required because there is just no known better way. This is the way we do it. We've always done it best way. It must be the best way to do it. Waste can be defined as one of 2 types. Type 1. These are the non-value-added activities that are currently required, such as work to comply with regulations. For example, the General Pharmaceutical Council requires that there is a responsible pharmacist in the department while medicines are being supplied. So, even if the activity taking place could be carried out by other pharmacy professionals, a pharmacist must still be present. Obviously, in practice, we don't have someone standing around doing nothing, but it does mean that we may use a pharmacist to do something that could be otherwise done by someone else. Type 2. These are the non-value-added activities that can be stopped immediately with no detrimental effect. We need to identify and eliminate these type 2 activities as soon as possible. So waste elimination will benefit any process. It is about process, not people, but it helps to reduce the burden of work on people while building in quality. It does not need to be complicated or on a big scale. We look for waste when we are trying to understand a process, when we are planning for improvement activities, as this team did, when staff satisfaction is low, when customer satisfaction is low, or when costs exceed price. We know that eliminating waste will increase staff satisfaction. It will increase customer satisfaction and decrease complaints. It will find opportunities for process improvement, increase productivity, and decrease costs. As you know, SASH Plus has evolved from the Virginia Mason production system. This applies principles of the Toyota production system to healthcare in order to maximize value for our customer, our patients. Taiichi Ohno, a founder of the Toyota production system, identified the 7 wastes of lean as outlined on this waste wheel. So our first category of waste is that of transportation, conveying, transferring, picking up, setting down, piling up, and otherwise moving items. So we see people moving patients' notes around the hospital from one location to another. Here we have supplies being moved from Pat Theatres to Vanguard. Inventory, a very common waste in healthcare. Maintaining excessive amounts of supplies, materials, or information for any length of time. Having more on hand than what is needed and used. So, for example, we see linen in overstocked cupboards. We see expensive clinical supplies which can be ordered just in time, but are often kept in the cupboard just in case. Coming to motion waste, unnecessary movement or movement that does not add value, or movement that is done too quickly or too slowly. So a therapist walking from CDU to therapies to collect equipment for our patients. Doctors walking to their office mid-examination to look up information. So now the waste of waiting. There are always staff or patients waiting at different points in processes across health services. This is defined as waiting for people or services to be provided, time when processes, people or equipment are idle. You may have staff waiting on the phone to schedule appointments or see patients waiting to see clinicians. Coming now to over-processing, unnecessary processes and operations that are traditionally accepted as necessary. For example, writing appointments into a diary and also inputting them into Cerner. Moving around our waste wheel, we come to overproduction, producing what is unnecessary, when it is unnecessary, or in unnecessary amounts. Do you provide copies of reports to people who never use them? Do you make photocopies of a form that is never used? So the final waste on our waste wheel is that of defects. This waste is related to costs for inspection of defects in materials and processes, in customer complaints and repairs. Some examples might be a patient being sent to the wrong clinic, patient's notes not being available in clinic where they're required, or perhaps our outpatients arriving for an appointment and there being no car parking available. In SASH, we adopt the acronym TIM-WOOD to help us to remember and identify the different types of waste. So we have T for transportation, I for inventory, M for motion, W is waiting, O overprocessing, O overproduction, and D defects. Although waste elimination is crucial to our delivery of value-added services, we know that there are barriers to recognising wastes. Not being able to watch a process enough, being unable to put traditionally accepted practices up for analysis, being unable to see required non-value-adding activities as waste, and recognising that a good portion of one's job is actually wasteful. Again, to emphasise, we are looking at waste in the process, not for wasteful people. So to borrow a phrase from elsewhere, how do you get a fish to see the water it's swimming in? How do you identify what waste you, your colleagues, your patients are experiencing? How do you find out what is really happening? So spend time on the Gemba, the place where the work is happening. Know what your customer wants and what your customer needs. Remember the 7 wastes, Tim Wood. Really need to be out there doing waste walks, having big ears, big eyes and a small mouth. Have those waste goggles on. So open the video from this link. You'll need your waste goggles on, grab a waste wheel, have a pencil and paper to jot down your observations and find at least 1 or 2 examples from each of the categories of waste. So welcome back. Now let's see if you saw Tim Wood on your waste walk. Waste wheel ready. Let's look for Tim Wood in order, so transportation first. In this example, the server was moving items up and down the length of the kitchen area, over and over again. Bread, milk, spread, crockery. Did you see inventory waste? For a small kitchen area, there seems likely to be excessive amounts of stock in this fridge. The risk is that newer stock will be put at the front, older stock will become unusable, and food will need to be thrown away. As with transportation, when she was carrying items the length of the kitchen area, she also spends time in motion waste, going to find those items. As with healthcare, there was a fair amount of waiting waste in this scenario. The server spent time waiting for the toast to pop up. She was not preparing for the next part of the process at this point, just waiting and watching, as in fact the toast did seem to burn. The chap was also left waiting a considerable amount of time before he received his order. Now over-processing. Remember, unnecessary processes that are accepted as necessary. Here, the server holds open the lid of the bin. This will happen automatically. Then she melts the spread in the microwave, where it would have melted easily when it went onto the hot toast. So now we come to overproduction. How much toast did this guy want? How much did she create? She certainly produced unnecessary amounts. And to finish our Team Wood with defects, the final of our 7 wastes. As we've said, the customer didn't receive his order. This process will not meet the value-added test. He ordered 1 slice with jello and received 8 cold and slightly burnt slices with butter. So to conclude, we've defined waste, identify how waste might be categorised, and identified some of those wastes in an everyday scenario on our virtual waste walk.